Well, it was a heat wave in Toronto in 1985. I was born April 11th, and I was born at 3:60 in the afternoon. My mom said I was an easy birth, so that's nice. But my early childhood, I was surrounded by my mother's parents, and we lived in a modest house in the beaches in Toronto. There was my two uncles, my aunt, my grandparents, my mother, and I. So, we lived a modest lifestyle. From the outside, everything was very kosher. On the inside of that house, there was lots of functioning alcoholism. My mother, she was 21 when she had me, and she had decided to go to nursing school. So from 0 to 4, I'm not going to say I was totally left alone, but I was left in my grandmother's care. And, there were times when my grandma was busier, she didn't want to bring her 3-year-old to the supermarket. So there were a lot of times I was left with an uncle who was an alcoholic. Now, this uncle is now estranged from the family. He's not close anymore, and he didn't sexually abuse me in the sense that, of touching. It was more exposure. So I can, specifically remember being, maybe 4 years old, not being able to read, but being able to look at pornography open and see smiles and see like oohs and ahs and kissing and, the biological aspect. Didn't really understand that, but I was like, these people are having a great time. And so I think, part of it just internalized with me that there's such a great connection there, but not really having seen what a healthy relationship is in life necessarily. I don't think they realized or, maybe weren't paying attention to my level of exposure at a young age. Like, yes, it's negative. It's not something I've shared with my family. I've shared it with my AA family, but that in and of itself, like as an adult now, knowing that's wrong, as a kid, it wasn't something that we talked about much, I had mentioned it to my mom a few times. My mother kind of, like something's really bad there. And so decided to move in with my stepfather. So we moved to Hamilton. A lot of, new schools, new friends, new everything. So there was about 4 or 5 years where my parents grew marijuana. So we moved a lot. If a landlord found out, it was like, midnight moving. And so that was kind of normalized to me, uprooting, moving. So I discovered, through therapy later in life that it caused me to have some bonding issues as well as attachment issues. So once I got kind of later into my mid to late teens, it was partying, raves, more of that introduction to harder drugs. I would say being a youth who didn't have the best outlets, best guidance, or any type of, just a mentor in the sense. Like, I didn't really have that. And so looking for love, looking for acceptance, not feeling it at home, not feeling it now from my dad. So I more or less was like, I'm going to get the love I want from men. I was about 15, the first time I ever prostituted myself. It was online. I would seek these men that, now I know were seeking to be with a minor and what I was at the time. But when you're kind of independent like that, like you feel like you're making the right choices and you feel in control to make those choices, but not fully understanding that you are technically a child. I have access to now all this money, and then that also introduced me to more drugs and, it just from late teens, early 20s was just like a big party. I didn't end up finishing high school. At the time, my friend's mother was Madame, or a female pimp. And so she, when I turned 18, was like, all right, you ready to make some real money? And so it went from there. And so I felt like I had independence. I had choice of what I did. If I didn't feel safe, I could leave. The other side of that is when you're alone with yourself, you're alone with your thoughts and your feelings, and nobody else knows you're feeling them, just you. I would say from that, 15 to like 18, 20, I wasn't really feeling a lot of anything because I was over-medicating myself with recreational drugs. It wasn't, like it was just a weekend thing. It was like a daily thing that most of my peers were, worried about, scoring a joint. And I was like, well, I'm going to pick up an 8-ball. So you're not old enough to think, well, that's not normal. I shouldn't be feeling like this because it's been so long that that's your normal. So, you just medicate and then you can put on your mask and feel fucking great like everyone else pretends to. Being able to mindfully and consciously separate what's going on with your body and mentally not check out, but like literally looking away. Even though you're present in that situation, you're not really there. It's, it took kind of I thought to myself, like, I'm kind of superhuman because like I have this awesome ability, but, later in life, after, during recovery, being able to speak with addiction counselors and do some cognitive behavior therapy, definitely was just a void, just a big void for love that I wanted, love that I craved, and love that I felt I deserved. Probably 19, 20 years old was when physical addiction kind of took over. So I definitely felt like without being able to medicate, I probably wouldn't have been making those choices. Morally, like, you're left somewhat empty, and it kind of changes and skews your perception and perspective of what a healthy relationship is. And definitely not even learning to have a healthy relationship first with myself. Definitely, like, because if you don't know that, then how are you going to have with others? But in the world of hour-long relationships, you don't really care, in and out. I now use the term predator, and that they preyed and sought me out and would... It blows my mind that I was never brought into trafficking or I was never, like, kidnapped and stuff. It blows my mind because I was very trusting and, like, my parents basically were like, maybe be home before 11 p.m., but had no idea what I was up to whatsoever. Like, people can be very supportive. On the other hand, people can be very judgmental. People can more or less turn their backs on you, not knowing how greatly you're suffering, but just guilty by association. In the beginning of recovery, it became very apparent to me that there was levels of recovery. Like the detox facility I had gone to for the first time, there were what I called street level users. So people that physically used on the street because maybe they were homeless, they were facing some adversities, maybe the insight was a little busy, so they didn't want to wait, so they just picked a curb. When you don't use on that level and then you're suddenly around people that use on that level, it's very eye-opening. It's scary. It's confusing because, in my heart's heart, I know deep down I am no better than that person. We are cosmically at par. But I still had that feeling of, well, I have a home to go back to when I'm done this 10 days. I have a job to go back to. I'm really fucking lucky. There's that aspect of it. And then going off of actually going to a treatment facility, tons of different levels. If you are somebody who is on social assistance or disability, you're homeless, you're basically, if you're not willing to pay out of pocket, you are put on a list, and it could be 2 or 3 years, and that's if you're still alive. Unfortunately, that's a way sometimes you get bumped up the list because the person before you passed away. It's a very sad reality that we live in and we live with. But, the upside is we do have care that is provided for, is funded for federally. Is it quick enough? No. Is it long enough, the treatment? No. But it's the bare bones what we got. However, if you have the funds, if you have supportive family, they can fund out of your pocket tons of facilities. But they are for profit, as most of them are, because professionals deserve to be paid. I once was doing a jail stint and had a correctional officer because as a human, you crave connection. But while in there, the best way I could describe it is being at a slumber party that you absolutely don't want to fucking go to, but you have to, and then you are locked in place. So I connected with one of the guards, and I'm like, just walk around. Please have a conversation with me. Please, like anything intelligent. And she said, the only difference between me and you is 3 glasses of wine. And I was like, wow. And it blew my mind because she shared that she previously had an addiction. She shared that at any point you could slip up and that, one choice could have a horrible, devastating effects the rest of your life. So it kind of put it in perspective for me that, having money is great. You can go to any facility, but the overall message you're going to have to learn is, valuing yourself, valuing your own life, where you're at, not what you can achieve. It's more about what's achievable, other than these, cars and mansions and whatnot. It's, is that reality? It's a fun fantasy, but for the majority of the population, just being able to be clean is, it's a great feeling. So stigma I've received from professionals, not too much, more or less, like I overheard a nurse once letting another nurse know that I am flagged in the system, which I am. I used to be an opiate seeker. When I was addicted, I did experience once, I felt the staff was not taking my pain as seriously because I wasn't bleeding on the outside, but I had what was called a ovarian torsion. So my ovary was twisted and it was cutting off blood supplies. So it took about 8 hours, and luckily I was able to see a specialist who was able to identify that. It was more or less not an invasive surgery, in about a 13-hour period, it was over and done with. But I did feel like there was an unnecessary 4 hours where, I was, and I think I had the feeling they were more or less seeing if I was going to get sick of waiting and leave, rather than, maybe I should have spoke up more. But I also was, kind of sitting with that feeling of, maybe this is nothing, maybe I'm just wasting their time. Most stigma I've faced is probably from my family. Being able to be open with your family about your addiction, and then having to convince them that you feel, and through experience, there's no other way. I needed methadone so bad, and for years, but I avoided it because what I heard was, it's another crutch. It's just another drug to get addicted to. It doesn't actually help, when those are all false. Those are lies. And methadone gave me the clarity to make clear choices. It gave me my life back. It gave me my mental stability back. My mom wasn't happy, but, she finally got it when, you know, I started to get carries and was trusted. Carries are when you provide so many clean pee tests over a period of time, you're able to bring your medication home rather than always going to a clinic. There's a lot of stigma about, I don't want people to see me at the clinic. I don't want my work or my coworkers or, you know, Bob down the street. So there's a lot of, you know, a little internal battle of, you know, you need it, you know, you have to go there. But the fear of being seen, the fear of being judged just for trying to better your life, it sucks. For December 6th will be 4 years. And, you know, I'm very proud of that. I'm less than 1% of people that actually attempt it. And it's something that I would recommend to anybody, and now is prescribed to people that are having pain-related, you know, relief, or they need that relief, right? But yeah, like now, stigma I experience is, oh, like you were one of those once, or when people use the term junkie, or like, oh, those types, they should put them on a bus and get rid of them. I've heard people at Tim Hortons like sitting, group of, you know, older adults, and I'll turn around and say, like, I was one of those junkies, you know, and if I'd listened to people like you, I probably wouldn't be alive today. And so I have somewhat fun with it, being able to educate people, or when people say, oh, those losers, you know, I have no problem saying, I used to be one of those losers, but, you know, I don't feel I'm that person today. What I would want for the future is for this type of work, educational components, being a little more brought forward to professionals. Again, that's in the works. That's what we're planning with SUAP, but I just like to see people have a little more open mind, open heart, opening their ears to listen before they're quick to judge. It's easy to look at someone up and down and say, oh, that guy looks rough, but who knows what he went through the last 24 hours, or, you know, who knows what that other person went through. But I hope that overall, as a society, that we're able to see the value in harm reduction work and destigmatizing what people have been through, and then empowering them to use it for good.